A river 35 meters wide emerges from the ground at the end of the Plurdalen Valley in central Norway. When you emerge from the water at the end of your half-kilometer swim beneath the surface of Plura, you will find yourself in a long, brightly colored cave. Stay tuned to cave hazards to see how they re-entered the cave in search of their dead companions. The Plurdalen River, central Norway's largest, emerges from the ground at the end of the valley at a whopping 35 meters in width. The Plura pond is a bizarre place, but if you dive in and swim for 500 meters beneath, you'll find a long, colorful cave. Two divers entered the sea at Plura on February 6, 2014, through a triangle hole they had cut in the ice. They were wearing dry suits and had all of their diving gear with them. After the first divers had been in the water for 2 hours and the sediment they stirred up had settled, 3 of their pals came in to join them. All 5 men were headed for Steinuggelflaget. They were all Finnish scuba divers who had met during their explorations of the Ojamo mine west of Helsinki. There was no one in charge, as was the norm, but Patrik Grönqvist, one of the 3 Finns who had found the tunnel the previous year, was the first diver to enter the water. Together with his buddy, the first-time explorer Jari Huuhtanen, he dove into the depths of the ocean. Scuba diving in the caves of Plura. An image of the Plura caves from the current documentary Diving into the Unknown. This adventure typified the most extreme form of a potentially hazardous activity. A dive to Steinuggelflaget would take 5 hours, using underwater scooters to travel to depths of more than 130 feet, 40 meters, much beyond the limits of what most recreational divers are comfortable with. The risk of hypercapnia, carbon dioxide poisoning, exists, as does the risk of device malfunction. According to Grönqvist, carbon dioxide gets into the bloodstream considerably faster and easier at depth, while cave divers employ devices called rebreathers to artificially absorb the carbon dioxide they exhale. These devices can get overloaded if the divers begin breathing rapidly, and respiratory control becomes more of a challenge at greater depths. Confusion and disorientation are possible side effects of even minor hypercapnia, which could have disastrous results in a dark cave. Grönqvist realized that Huuhtanen was not following him around an hour into the dive, just after the pair had swum through the deepest section and were about 110 meters lower than the cave entrance at Plura. He returned to find his buddy trapped in a tight spot in the cave, his equipment cord wrapped around a rock. He was flashing a flashlight in an SOS. The BBC's cave map of the Plura system. Huuhtanen appeared to be experiencing some anxiety, which put him at risk of breathing too quickly. While Huuhtanen was swapping mouthpieces to use the cylinder of gas Grönqvist provided him to lower the carbon dioxide levels in his body, he began helplessly gulping water. In front of Grönqvist's eyes, his friend was dying, but he couldn't afford the hypercapnia that would result from his own agitation. He made a brief effort to liberate the body, then forced himself to relax. There was nothing else to do but make the long, sluggish journey to Steinuggelflaget. Another potentially fatal concern for divers is decompression sickness, which can set in if they ascend too quickly to the surface after being submerged for too long. The length of time spent in decompression increases about the depth of the dive. Having spent roughly 20 minutes at a depth of 110 meters while stopping to rescue a friend, Grönqvist anticipated spending several hours on decompression breaks before returning to the surface. He was also aware that the second group of divers would eventually run into Huuhtanen's body. Vesa Rantanen led the second squad as the team's first diver. Even though Rantanen and Grönqvist were reunited after 3 hours, Rantanen's decompression time had been extended by that amount due to his struggle to get past Huuhtanen's body. He had to come up to the surface 80 minutes early because he was running out of fuel. Soon later, he started experiencing some nagging discomfort in his joints. These signs of decompression sickness, also known as the bends, worsened dramatically over the course of the next few hours. Dr. Vesa Rantanen. In 2014, Vesa Rantanen, age 33, was a veteran cave diver. Later, Rantanen learned that diver Jari Huuhtanen, who had been following close behind him as he struggled to get around Huuhtanen's body, was also having trouble. When Huuhtanen arrived at the scene of the first accident, authorities in Norway believe he panicked. Kai Kankinen, the 5th and last diver, too did his best to help Huuhtanen, but he was ultimately unsuccessful. When asked about specifics, Kankinen has admitted in interviews that his recollection is hazy. Although Visa Rantanen attempted to reach Steinaglflaget, Kankinen chose not to. However, he changed his mind and swam back to the beginning. More than 11 hours after beginning a dive that was expected to last no more than 5, he emerged from the cave in the wee hours of the following day. Once he reached Plura, he had to chip through a thin layer of ice to get out of the water. Everyone who got out of the cave alive ended up in the hospital with decompression sickness. They were interviewed by Norwegian officials before the Plura cave was sealed. Discovering the interconnectedness of cave systems is a major milestone in the cavern diving community. Back in 2013, when Grönqvist first explored the Plura cave system, he was accompanied by Kai Kankinen and Sami Pakarinen. In 2014, Sami Pakarinen, then 34 years old, was a seasoned cave diver. Pakarinen was the most experienced diver of the group, and he had a dry sense of humor to boot. He also looked a little like Vin Diesel, a Hollywood tough guy. There was an accident while he was in Mexico instructing a diving class. Pakarinen spent the day strolling around the hotel courtyard after talking to the 3 survivors on the phone from the hospital. He was good friends with both of the victims, and he had trained them. He was unable to teach underwater, but he didn't know what else to do. Soon after, he answered a Skype call from British caver Rick Stanton. Stanton, who is well known for his cave rescue and recovery work, suspected he would be asked to travel to Plurdalen to retrieve the bodies because he had previously conducted a recovery there in 2006. He therefore began gathering as much information as possible about the cave in advance of his arrival. It didn't take long for the Norwegian police to reach out to Stanton, and 2 weeks later, he and 2 other British divers, John Volanthen and Jason Mallinson, climbed into Steinaglflaget to assist. Plurdalen, or the valley. It was determined, however, that Hutturinen could not be easily unfastened from the Steinaglflaget side, and he was blocking access to the second casualty, Usamaki, when they dove down to investigate the scene of the accident. Stanton explains that it became clear that the operation would take a long time and involve numerous dives into frigid depths. The only way to reach the victims was to repeat the crossing from Plura, starting from the other side. According to Stanton, he and his colleagues divers gave the idea serious thought, but ultimately decided against it because of the dangers involved. Thus, the Norwegian police decided to abandon the rescue attempt. At that point, firefighter Grönqvist promised to take care of Jari Hutturinen's wife. Grieving relatives would benefit from having access to the bodies, which would also speed up insurance and inheritance claims. To his surprise, he learned that his pals shared his notion. This is Patrick Grönqvist. That means Pakarinen, along with the other 2 survivors, will be participating. It is common knowledge that the graves of mountaineers whose bodies could not be securely recovered are scattered across the world's most treacherous summits. Pakarinen counters that it would have been the same as abandoning car crash victims by the side of the road if the bodies had been left in the Norwegian cave. Because of this, he and his friends understood that if they didn't succeed, a significant portion of the largest wet cave system in Northern Europe might be permanently off-limits to cavers. However, the mission's planning had to be kept under wraps. They knew that if they approached the Norwegian police for approval, they would be flatly denied. They had already done the traverse, unlike the British rescue crew, and were confident that they could get to the bodies from the Plura side, liberate Hutturinen's body, and bring both of them to the surface. I was wondering what your opinion of Plurdalen Valley Cave was. Leave a comment and let us know. And on that note, I must adjourn. We hope the video was entertaining to you. Please subscribe to our channel so that we may continue to provide you with wonderful videos like this.